so we'll have vasoconstriction, and vasoconstriction leading to activation of platelets, which then bind onto that exposed subendothelial collagen, and then those activated platelets will then release ADP, which cause themselves to be even more activated via receptor P2Y12, which is inhibited by clopidogrel. Platelets will then secrete fibrinogen. Platelets will also secrete factor 5. Platelets will also secrete factor 7. Platelets will also secrete growth factors, which allow platelets to differentiate and grow. Platelets will also secrete serotonin, again another vasoconstrictor, thromboxane, another vasoconstrictor and platelet activator, histamine, again platelet activators, ADP, ATP, and calcium. All these things are important for that primary hemostasis. So now that we have primary hemostasis, we then enter secondary hemostasis, the secondary phase. And the secondary phase really is part of the coagulation, because all of this really is just platelet activation, really just forming that primary or temporary, because I want to say primary hemostasis. So this is just a temporary mechanism to stop blood. So then what then happens from here? We then remember we already, obviously all of these things happen simultaneously, but we remember we have our tissue factor that was secreted by that injured endothelium, and tissue factor, number one, tissue factor will bind onto factor 7, bind on and activate factor 7, and these two will form the tissue factor activated factor 7 complex, which activates factor 10. Factor 10 is what we call part of the common pathway. So then we'll have this A main active. So we'll then have active factor 10. Active factor 10 factor 5, which is, so this is, I'm not going to write factors because I feel as though I'll have too much to write. So factor 5 secreted by platelets becomes activated into 5A, and then that factor 10A and factor 5 will merge together under calcium as a coenzyme and form the factor 10, factor 10, factor 5 complex. And this factor 10, factor 5 complex activates that a small amount of prothrombin into thrombin. So if we remember, clotting really is the conversion of prothrombin into thrombin. No, it's the conversion of fibrinogen into fibrin under by thrombin. So really we're already leaning towards, we now have our thrombin, an active thrombin really. And thrombin, I'm actually going to grab that out. I just need a tiny bit of space to write perhaps in in green. Oh God, yeah, in green, I suppose. So thrombin activates factors 8. It activates factor 11. It activates factor 13. So then once we have this little bit of thrombin, obviously it obviously activates fibrinogen, but then I'm only just talking about factors. So thrombin will then come in, and so this used to be called the tissue. This is the tissue factor pathway. So this is the tissue factor pathway. So once we have this little bit of thrombin, it comes in and activates factor 11. So we start here. I'm going to bring these, well, I suppose I'll just draw them this way. Thrombin will activate factor 11. So this is thrombin there. Into activated factor 11. Factor 11 will activate factor 9 into activated factor 9. Thrombin again will activate factor 8. So again, this is thrombin into factor 8 into activated, oh gosh, not 7, definitely not 7. 7 is part of the tissue factor. And then factor 9 and factor 8, the activated factor 9 and factor 8 under calcium will activate factor 10. So, and then activated factor 10 will again link with factor 5 under calcium to again form, oh gosh, I want to bring it there and just do that. So again, this part really, what it does is augments or potentiates, you know, it's like just augments, oh God, how do you spell augment? Oh, it potentiates, augments and potentiates thrombin formation. And as we have, you know, more thrombin, so this is it's actually called it used to be called the intrinsic pathway, and this used to be the extrinsic pathway, but I think we now just call it the tissue factor pathway, and that's the augmenting pathway really. But obviously we always have factor 10, which has always been called the common factor, you know, the common pathway, as in this bit is always called the common pathway, and these two are always separated. But anyway, it is one thing really. It leads to you know, initially you form a little bit of thrombin, and that little bit of thrombin then activates these factors, which you obviously the need for the potentiation pathway of activating even more thrombin. So once we have this thrombin there, a lot of thrombin, it then comes in here. So this thrombin which we have then comes in nicely. I'm going to write it in blue. It comes in, so this is our thrombin, so it comes in there, and what it does is converts that fibrinogen Oh, I should have written it in, actually in its own color. So this is thrombin. And what it does is converts fibrinogen into fibrin. Fibrin, really, I don't know why I say fibrin. Into fibrin. And this is done by thrombin. And really, the definition again, what hemostasis says to achieve is to convert fibrinogen into fibrin under thrombin. And that fibrin really becomes a mesh. Remember, these are platelets that are aggregated. It becomes a mesh on top of that, on top of these platelets. And what these mesh do is they will trap red blood cells. So we'll have red blood cells trapped onto this mesh. So we'll have our discoid red blood cells trapped into this mesh under this exposed part of the endothelium. And then thrombin again then converts factor 13, which is just here. Thrombin is blue. So it converts factor 13 into active factor 13, which really is cross-linking bridges. Again, this is converted by factor. Oh no, it's converted by thrombin. And these cross-linkings, I'm actually going to do them in... I've learned to always close my pens because they dry out. I'm going to write it in orange. So these cross-linking, factor 13 comes in and cross-links all that fibrin mesh, into cross-links, and all these cross-links, you know, form a stable clot, which is then called secondary hemostasis, which is much more permanent. So once we have cross-linking, we have secondary hemostasis, which is a stable clot, and it's all due to that. And that stable clot then allows, you know, there are trapped blood cells there, there are platelets there, we have a nice mesh holding everything together, allowing that damaged endothelium there to start the healing process, and endothelium then heals itself. And crucially, once endothelium heals itself, it then goes back to behaving as what we expect endothelium to do. It then secretes anti-clot substances. So, healed endothelium will then secrete tissue type plasminogen activator, and tissue type plasminogen activator, and also uronicase, again plasminogen activator. And all these two do is convert they use black, is convert plasminogen, which is secreted by the liver, into plasmin. And plasmin is an active is an active fibrinolysis, fibrinolysis. And all it does, it comes in and degrades all the cross-linking. It degrades fibrin, you know, all that stable cross-linked secondary hemostasis, the cross-linked fibrin. It destroys all of that, and in degrading all of that. So, did I say no? Plasminogen. Yeah. So then plasminogen. This plasmin comes in and degrades that, destroys all that cross-linking, and you know, we end up with, as fibrin is being degraded, it releases degradation products such as, you know, a common one that we know. All these, as they are being degraded, they release fibrin degradation products such as D-dimers. Which are obviously can be measured, and they are, and I'll write it down here, I think. Like D-dimers indicate intravascular clot. So when they degrade, because plasmin will only degrade a clot that is inside a vessel. So when we have D-dimers, we then know that there was a clot inside a vessel. So really, that is all there is to hemostasis. Another mechanism that is activated by healed endothelium is the secretion, is the conversion of is really the conversion of thrombomodulin and changing its conformation away from activating thrombin to protein C, which mixes with protein S and becomes anti-thrombin. It will also, it will activate that, and it will also, so this will be this bit, and it will also secrete anti-tissue factor. So a protein that is anti-tissue factor. So essentially, really, and also anticoagulants, like anticoagulants. And all it does, really, it inhibits, and it also inhibits all the factors that we need for the coagulation cascade, inhibits tissue factor, so thereby inhibiting the tissue factor pathway, inhibits thrombin, thereby stopping really the thrombin from converting fibrinogen into fibrin. Therefore the clot dissolves and we return to blood that's flowing nicely within the vessel. We have a healed endothelium, which then goes back to secreting all of its anticoagulation or anti-clotting and anti-active and antiplatelet mechanisms, such as nitric oxide, such as heparin sulfate, such as prostacyclin, and really that's all there is to hemostasis. So really, in this section I have discussed how platelet activation, how damage to the endothelium will activate platelet activation and aggregation, leading to primary hemostasis. I've discussed how platelets uses its own receptors such as GP1A2A to bind directly onto the endothelium, or indeed bind onto the endothelium via von Willebrand factor. Von Willebrand factor. I've also shown how platelets components, how it releases its own granules, the alpha and the dense granules, which contain substances such as calcium, von Willebrand factors, histamine, serotonin, factor 5, growth factors, all of ADP, ATP, all of which are used by platelets in an autocrine and paracrine fashion to activate themselves, and how once they are activated they bind onto that exposed collagen, aggregate via the conformational change of GP to B3A receptor under von Willebrand factor, and that then houses fibrinogen. And then the tissue factor, I've shown again how secondary hemostasis occurs in terms of the tissue factor pathway, and factor 7 forming a complex, which then activates factor 10, which then forms a complex with factor 5 under calcium, and that activated factor 10, factor 5 complex activates prothrombin into thrombin. And that little bit of thrombin then activates factors 8, factor 11, and factor 13. I've shown how active factor 11 then activates factor 9, and then factor 9 and factor 8 form a complex, which then activates factor 10, and then factor 10, activated factor 10 forms a complex with activated factor 10 to potentiate and augment thrombin activation, and that activated thrombin then activates fibrin from fibrinogen, and that fibrinogen which is housed between platelets becomes fibrinogen which is housed between platelets becomes fibrin, and that fibrin is then cross-linked via the activation of factor 13, which again is also activated by thrombin, and that cross-linking forms a stable clot, which is part of the secondary hemostasis, and that stable clot then allows healing to occur, and once healing has occurred, the healed endothelium activates TPA or UPA, which then converts plasminogen to plasmin, and plasmin then degrades fibrin into degradation products such as D-dimers, and then those degradation products, are what tells us that there was a bleed intravascularly, and then the healed endothelium again secretes anti-tissue factor and anticoagulants, and also secretes and also activates the conformation, or I don't know what I want to say, and then promotes the conformational change of promodulin towards protein C, and protein C, which then binds protein S and forms an antithrombin. So really, when we look at hemostasis, it really sounds like it is a process which is based on one enzyme becoming activated and activating the next enzyme along the step until we have a stable clot. So what we need really for this process are platelets and all the clotting factor or coagulation factors, and you know, and expose collagen. And really that's all there is. So in the next section, really I'll take it from here and look at how all these processes can then be inhibited. For example, as I've already mentioned, that clopidogrel, you know, you know, these platelets secrete, say, ADP. I don't want to use green, I suppose. I'm just going to go for orange. For example, you know, they will secrete ADP, which then binds onto a platelet receptor called P2Y12. And that receptor, oh gosh, I should have made this like ADP, which then binds onto this receptor, which is called P2Y12, which is actually inhibited by clopidogrel. And also, you know, aspirin, for example, inhibits COX enzymes, especially COX-1 and obviously COX-2 as well, again inhibiting platelet activation. Warfarin again then inhibits vitamin K dependent factors such as 7, and again, you know, 10 inhibiting again the glutathione cascade and other, you know, heparin, other antiplatelets and anticoagulants. So I will look into that in the next section and show how that is then used in clinic. Thank you.